Good morning. I'm Rade, and I'd like to welcome you all to New Perspectives panel discussion on reimagining emotional education. We are honored to have with us Gitanjali and Dr. Kiran Singh as panelists and Dr. Vladimir Yatsenko as our moderator today. New Perspectives is sponsored by our university and hosted by Sri Aurobindo Integral Life Center, located here in South Carolina, USA, and Surat, India. All three organizations are founded and supported by H.P. Rama. New Perspectives is a platform for the exploration and discovery of contemporary applications of integral yoga across diverse fields of endeavor. Emphasis is placed on in-depth research as well as subjective investigation, including intuitive inquiry and experiential discoveries. In its quest for a deeper understanding of critical issues facing the world and avenues for their resolution, New Perspectives recognizes the paramount role of the individual and the necessity for self-development and self-expression. In this regard, Sri Aurobindo states, "The child's education ought to be an outbringing of all that is best, most powerful, most intimate, and living in its nature. The mold into which his action and development ought to run is that of his innate quality and power. The individual must acquire new things, but he will acquire them best and most vitally on the basis of his own development type and inborn force. And so too, the functions of an individual ought to be determined by his natural turn, gift, and capacities. One who develops freely in this manner will be a living soul and mind, and will have a much greater power to be of service to the race." With this in mind, New Perspectives introduces a series on integral education, inspired by Sri Aurobindo and the Mother's version of self-fulfillment and spiritual progress, supported by a comprehensive yet individualized approach to education. According to the Mother, an integral education must involve five principal aspects relating to the five principal activities of the human being: the physical, the vital, which includes emotions, the mental, the soul or psychic, and the spiritual. Today, our New Perspective panelists will address the vital aspect in reimagining emotional education. So I'd like to now introduce our moderator, Dr. Vladimir Yatsenko, with the Sri Aurobindo Integral Life Center here in Fountain Inn, South Carolina. Vladimir is a scholar and instructor of Sanskrit and Sanskrit literature, and a researcher in Vedic and Vedantic studies. He was a resident of Auroville for over 25 years and a student and educator in integral yoga since his early 20s. Vladimir, I'll now hand it over to you to introduce our panelists and perhaps elaborate a bit more on the topic for today's discussion.
Thank you, Radha. Yes, it's a very important and very interesting format what we created, New Perspectives in integral education. And today we are touching upon the most difficult part of this education, known as vital education, the education of our feelings, emotions, and sensations, of our senses. We have two prominent speakers with us today, Dr. Kiran Singh and Gitanjali, who will speak on this topic, and we will open discussion about their presentations. So Kiranji is as she asked me to introduce her, as a scholar and the researcher in the integral education, and she is now a director of Sri Aurobindo Integral Life Center in Surat. Gitanjali, on the other hand, has many credentials. Of course, she was educated in Sri Aurobindo Ashram, was very close to Amal Kiran, and So if I was to say a few words about Gitanjali, it would be that she's a social entrepreneur and educationist. She's also having founded many different businesses and social ventures. She is now setting up Himalayan Institute of Alternatives in Ladakh and becomes its and is its founding CEO and dean. And also she is a student of Shirvindra the Mother, of Sanskrit language and literature, Vedas, Upanishads. So she is a spiritual student of Indian spirituality. With this brief introduction of the panelists, I would like to say a few words about the topic. And when I was professor of Sanskrit in our university, we had a very interesting survey or discussion of what would students of the university like to get in their life. And what was interesting, all of them, mainly like 90% of them, spoke about happiness in life, to have a happy life. So Mother speaks about this, and here is her quotation: "The conviction that one has the right to be happy, and we are all convinced that we must be happy in this life, leads, as a matter of course, to the will to live one's own life at any cost. And this attitude, by its obscure and aggressive egoism, leads to every kind of conflict and misery, disappointment and discouragement, and very often leads or ends in catastrophe." So is there any way out from this situation? How to be happy and at the same time have a fulfilling and meaningful life? This is the major question of our panel discussion today. And here we come to this importance of vital education. How to deal with our senses, feelings, emotions, how to use them in our life so that they would help us to build a truly happy life. So with this kind of brief introduction, I would like to give microphone to Kiranji, Dr. Kiran Singh. Please introduce us to this vital education.
Thank you, Vladimir ji. Thank you, Radhe ji, for a brief and good introduction. It's certainly, very concerning topic today to talk about vital education or emotional education. It's a great opportunity to talk about emotional learning and its relevance in this panel amongst esteemed scholars. Before I talk about the need of emotional education, I want to put forward 3 observations. The first is that we are living in an intellectual golden age. The advancement of knowledge over the past 2 centuries has been astonishing, whether it is our understanding of the universe, our measuring and processing of the data, formulating new concepts or harnessing the full potential of nature. Our knowledge and information about the world has increased drastically. The second observation which I want to put, that almost all educational institutes are struggling to keep up with the changing needs of the times. Administrators are frustrated, teachers are struggling with the advancement of immense information and rapidly changing environment. And in this situation, students are paying the price. Everyone is looking for a way to reform and transform a troubled education system. And the third observation which I want to put forward is that all of us know the harsh reality of the current education system, the lack of holistic learning and lack of education's applicability. We focus on quantitative evidence of intellect We look hard for grades and standardized test scores because we believe they demonstrate ability and predict success at educational institutes. However, we know that intellect is only a part of what makes people succeed in their work and personal lives, and not necessarily the most important part either. There is a prolonged silent restlessness in educators and parents both that regarding the kind of education that learners are receiving nowadays, where current generations of students are not able to manage themselves. Even as they are intellectually advanced, why is it that even after excelling in their domains of education, learners know very little about managing their own mental health? Why do so many learners struggle to empathize, to show compassion and kindness to peers, people in various situations at home and work, and for the users of their services and products in their professions? Especially as we experience situations like the current pandemic, we have to face the reality that the education system does not do a good job of instilling values that can make learner resilient in changing conditions. Another important question we need to ask is, who are the ideals we introduce to our learners? One will find that the ideal that most students gravitate towards would be a business tycoon or intellectual mind, which society has projected as the epitome of humankind. Even as there is much to learn from their lives and journey, there is a need as well to present to our learners people who lived for human value and ethics, to reflect on their journeys, their struggles and challenges, and understand how they overcome this in life. This value-based learning is necessarily rooted in human condition of basic human value and consciousness. And whenever one talk about value, emotions are always layered beneath it. In our Indian knowledge system, Ram and Ravan from the Ramayana present these two characters representing two sides of learning. Ram with inner and holistic understanding of the world, who is known as Antaryami, and Ravana was called Brahmagyani, who even as an intellectual being with great knowledge and understanding of the world, still led a life that led him down a destructive path for himself and others around him. So, before we start thinking of reconceptualizing the education system, I think everyone involved needs to ask themselves a very important question. Do we need to reimagine what education can really be? If yes, then it is time to shift our paradigm towards value-based learning. And that would come from emotional education and its applicability in life. The moment we talk about value-based learning, environment, and emotional education, one is talking about learner-centered environment because emotions are rooted in and expressed through human beings, not simply in content. It is human that decide how to explore and understand content, and it is not content that decides how human deal with it. In the course of last 2 decades, emotional intelligence has become a very important indicator of person's knowledge, skills, and abilities in the workplace, educational institutions, and personal life. Research shows that emotional influence attention, memory and learning, decision making, creativity, mental and physical well being, ability to form and maintain positive relationships, and academic and work performance. As each individual develops their unique worldview shaped by their past experiences, the emotional development of a person can give big impact in growth of a learner. The emotional development of a person is filtered through the perception of the outer world. As each person perceives the world in different light, it leads to the feeling of different emotions. Young age, we get surrounded by invisible structures referred to as culture environment. Normally, the knowledge we gain from this structure allows us to navigate the world. But if we can change this invisible structure, then we gain mastery over our emotions. Emotionally intelligent people recognize this and use their thinking to manage their emotion rather than being managed by emotion. Daniel Goleman, a psychologist and writer from academics, social and emotional learning at Yale University, has proved by giving neuroscience evidence that IQ is only a part of what makes people succeed in their work and personal lives, and not necessarily the most important part either. IQ, that is intelligent quotient, and EQ and IQ together determine growth and development of a person. It is possible to be intellectually brilliant but emotionally inept, which causes many life problems. Skills such as self awareness, emotional mastery, motivation, empathy, and social effectiveness have greater impact than raw intelligence, career success, outstanding individual performance, leadership, and the creation of successful teams. Emotions such as anger, humor, anxiety, optimism, melancholy, and happiness play in all aspects of our lives. But people can learn how to manage these emotions and use them as power to transform their own lives as well as outer world also. There are basically five major pillars of emotional intelligence if we consider. That is, one is self-awareness, that is in knowing one's emotion. Second is managing emotions, that is in handling feelings so they are appropriate. Third is motivation, in marshalling emotion in service of a goal. Fourth is recognizing emotion in others, in empathy, which is fundamental people skill. And fifth is handling relationships, which is very important, a skill in managing emotions in others. We will elaborate these five pillars now. The first pillar is awareness. Sri Aurobindo and Mother outlined vital education as the education of the sensory and emotional aspect of the person. They outline the goal of education that includes vital education as a complete holistic transformation, and its approach is multifaceted. Vital education has two principal aspects. The first concerns the development and use of sense organs, and the second is progressing awareness and control of the character, culminating in its transformation. The education of the senses again has several aspects which are added to one another as being grows. The education first starts with awareness. The sense organs, if properly cultivated, can attain a precision and power of functioning far exceeding what is normally expected of them. Actually, we overlook in our educational institution from the beginning itself. We just focus on the content. And here, Mother talks about sensory honing the senses. They elaborate that to become conscious of the various movements in oneself and be aware of what one does and why one does it is the starting point. The learner must be taught to observe, to note their reactions and impulses and their causes, to become a discerning witness of their emotion, movements of feeling, fleeting feelings, instincts, and the background motivation that support them together with ancillary emotions. To enhance vital education, Mother has suggested to use dance, drama, art, and music. And here I must mention that in Indian knowledge system, Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra as a treatise on aesthetics is a great resource to understand emotional feelings and the states from transient to permanent and the clarification of emotion which can be called rasa. Rasa is composed of two letters, that is Ra, which means to give, Sa, which means motion. Bharat Muni defines rasa as a bhava, vibhava, anubhava, sanchari, sayogadra, ras nishpatti, which means that through the co-mingling, co-appearance or sayogad of vibhava, anubhav and sanchari bhava, a maturing ripeness or production of ras takes place. Vibhavas stand for the determinants, anubhavas for consequent of sanchari bhavas for transitory mental states, which are accessories to the basic mental disposition. This knowledge lies, from long back in our Indian knowledge system. We overlook this Bharat Muni Natya Shastra very conveniently. Though the arts learners get an opportunity to to understanding emotional experience and ability to move them towards aesthetic experiences. Second pillar is managing emotion. So till now, we have come to know that being aware of our emotion are a crucial part of mastering emotion. But the question arises, why should one master it? The world seems to be a stage for emotional expression. Should one master the emotional aspect just to manage outer world or for some other bigger reason? As a part of understanding ourselves, our inner self, knowing ourselves as each part of our being interact and influence each other, the mastery of emotional or vital aspects of oneself is critical. A neuroscientist, Mark Brackett, director of Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, has created ruler method for working emotional skills. Ruler is the acronym recognizing, understanding, labeling, expressing, and regulating emotions. Once you start recognizing, you know exactly where this derives from. This EQ model is an evidence based approach to social emotional learning that supports the entire educational community in understanding the value of emotions and building the skills of emotional intelligence. This is one the various methods in which one can adapt emotional learning in classroom. Third pillar is motivation. Creating and maintaining positive educational climate is critical to emotional growth. If one creates a pyramid of the student of one class and organizes according to their cognitive ability, that is IQ, normally it happens in the classroom. We judge our students by their intelligence and EQ level. You'll find that at the top are those who are at higher IQ level, which is very small number. And at the lowest level is the large number. So the difference is vast and we don't pay much attention to it at all. To enable growth of the student with high EQ, that is emotional quotient, one has to enable learning environment that allows for emotional awareness, reflection, and motivation to spur on. It is this ability of student to grow their EQ that enables them to work towards contributing to society as a fundraiser, social worker, or life saver. The fourth pillar, recognizing emotion in others. To elaborate on this point, I want to share a brief anecdote from Stephen Covey's book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, on empathy changes our paradigm and the way we look at the things and how we react to the situation. He shares that he was traveling by subway in New York when he saw a man with kids who entered in the train as well. The kids started making noise, yelling, and disturbing others, but father kept his eyes closed. Everybody was irritated. Ultimately, the author got up and asked the man on why he was not taking responsibility of his children and making them quiet. The man responded saying that, oh, he didn't realize his kids were making noise. They were just returning from hospital where their mother had passed away. He said he did not know what to think and did not know how to handle it either. The author reflects, can you imagine that I felt that at that moment? My paradigm shifted. Suddenly I saw things differently. I felt differently. I behaved differently. My irritation vanished. I didn't have to worry about controlling my attitude or my behavior. My heart was filled with the man's pain. Feeling of sympathy and compassion flowed freely. He said, your wife just died? Oh, I'm sorry. Can you tell me about it? What can I do to help? Everything changed in an instant. This deep change in understanding of situation that led to a paradigm shift is about looking at the same thing with a radical change, whether it be regarding incidents of everyday life or core concepts and practices of given domain or discipline or field. The conversation of the people in the train in the anecdote speaks to the great divide in human abilities that lies between mind and heart, or more technically between cognition and emotion. This ability to integrate thought and feeling, to offer action through empathy, falls in the domain of emotional intelligence, which is the crucial role of emotional functioning. And the fifth and last pillar is handling relationship with people and the world. So till now, we may have understood that emotion pertain to just individual, and gets triggered when the person interacts with the outer world, such as feeling of pain, happiness, power, and based on these feelings, the perspective of the world changes. But all these are temporary and fluctuating emotions. To explore beyond our awareness, management, motivation, and recognition of emotions, one has to approach consciousness. For this, we go back to Sri Aurobindo and Mother again. In Sri Aurobindo's words, the true vital being is wide, vast, calm, strong, without limitation, firm, and immovable, capable of all power, all knowledge, all ananda. It is moreover without ego, for it knows itself to be projection and instrument of the divine. It is the divine warrior, pure and perfect. And it is instrumental force for all divine realizations. During germination, seed first moves towards the darkness of its own personal unconsciousness, but taking potential power from the depth of the darkness, it moves towards the light. For that, we need to do the necessary part of our purification. We have to achieve that silence. And to achieve that mental silence, we have to stop thinking about self. Only then we can achieve the mastery. So our emotions move upwards towards Sat Chit Ananda. The role of education is to show the right path to raise above surface consciousness and search for inner bliss, light, and truth. And for that, tremendous willpower, self-discipline, honing the senses, development of character is needed. For this, one has to quiet the mind and manage emotions. And this has to happen through holistic learning and emotional education. To end, I will leave you with an anecdote from Gautam Buddha, who told his 5 students, only 5 students left with Gautam Buddha, unfortunately. He started journey with many students. And Ananda was left all alone with him. Who were left with him, that the knowledge which I shared with you is like a boat. Use it when you are in water. Do not carry on your head. You are walking on the sand. And I would say the same for emotions, which are like boat that we have to use to swim, but we cannot carry the heavy weight of emotion in our heart. Otherwise, we find ourselves buried and overpowered in it. And hence, there is the need for emotional education as something that every learner should have access to. That is what I wanted to present. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kiranji, very much for your beautiful and overall deep presentation on the relation of the mind and the heart. And as Sri Aurobindo also points out, this is our major problem in life, a human problem, psychological problem, the relations of the mind and the heart. They are not tuned together. They are and the will, mind, and the heart, these 3 major components, if they work together in unity, then man becomes yukta. In the Vedic terms, he becomes composed. He can achieve anything. But our emotions are pulling us away. Our mind and dogmas and ideas about life, giving us different path to look at. And so we are kind of torn and we are divided within. And this division creates misery, about which Mother speaks in her conversations. That the human beings are most miserable because they really do not know what is coming and how to deal with it. They are always anticipating some problems, looking for some solutions. They do not know the future and they want to know the future. And it is very emotional, full of feelings. And that's the most miserable creature on earth. But there is a solution to it. one can start educating oneself, start to become a master of one's own emotions and thoughts. And with this kind of thinking, I am giving the microphone to Gitanjali. Gitanjali, are you with us?
Yes, very much.
Please, could you please elaborate on vital education in the practical terms? What could we do, yes, to educate our children in this in the right way?
So thank you, Vladimir, and thanks, Dr. Kiran, for that very nice platform that you set for me, to take on from here. So, taking on from what has been discussed today, the problem of education that we have been always discussing, to me, just boils down to this fact that it is a partial solution to a whole. So, how come? Now, the human body is made up of his body, which we call the physical, the emotions, the mind, and also the soul or the spiritual principle in us. But for the past few hundred years, somehow, after the Industrial Revolution, where productivity and efficiency became important, we have only been focusing on the mind. And that too, we are not doing a great job of it. We are not doing the complete mind. So that to me is the biggest issue here, that we are treating the whole with a partial solution. And while that can be a topic of discussion, and that is what this series is going to do every week, take you through the various aspects of education, today we focus our discussion on the vital education, as what Sri Aurobindo says, or it is said commonly as emotional education. And to understand emotional education, let us first try and understand what is it in us, where is it? You must have heard of this explorer George Mallory. He scaled the Mount Everest, and when he was asked that why did you do that, the answer was because it is there. So what is it that drove him to do that? Or what is that impetus within us that inspires us to take up this seemingly impossible mission, these lofty ideals that we seek, and that's what advances humanity from century to century, and not just gives us that initial impetus, but also sustains us with energy and enthusiasm in order to achieve them. Or again, what is that source of aesthetics in us that longs for beauty and harmony in our lives? That power which converts all our mental ideas into actions. We just spoke about how there is a disconnect between thought and feelings. Actually, feelings or emotions or this vital being in us is actually responsible to convert every thought into an accomplished action. From little things like making us to jump out of bed at 5 a.m. when we have resolved to exercise regularly. Very often, as we have all experienced, when the alarm goes off, we shut the alarm, turn it to the other side, and just sleep. It's just 5 more minutes. But what is it that makes us get up and go once we have decided to do something? That is the seat of dynamism within us, which Sri Aurobindo calls the vital. This is this vital that propels all action. It energizes everything. It enthuses all our initiatives to their accomplishment, right from getting up at 5 in the morning or being that conduit through which the music of Mozart and Wagner or the verses of Shakespeare and Kalidasa from their abstract beginnings in the higher planes of existence descend into concreteness. So this is the vital being that we are talking about. So how to educate it, and why is it difficult to educate it? You must have recently watched this movie, the Ford versus Ferrari. You know about these sports cars. Do you know, for instance, that a Bugatti Veyron is about 8,000 liter capacity? The engine capacity is 8,000 liters. It is so fast that it can beat a common airplane if it takes off on a race. Imagine such a car which either does not have a driver or just wants to go at its own speed anywhere, or it is very happy to make anybody its driver. What would be the condition of our roads or of anything? That is what our vital being is. It is like a strong engine of a sports car, but with one little problem, that it is cut off from the higher light. It is like a blind man groping in the dark, and whoever holds the hand, it becomes its slave. So when we talk about this vital education, it is this problem that we are addressing. And it has been addressed for centuries together, right from Plato to Socrates to till today. It is always considered as a difficult tyrant. It is people just don't know how to deal with it. So if you look at the historical perspective, there have been two theories that emerged to handle this 8,000 liter engine. One was that what Vladimir was just saying, that happiness is considered the aim of life. It has been considered for thousands of years. Whereas we know that happiness itself can never be sought. It is the result of something. It is the result of some progress. It is so. How does one look at these emotions, this happiness? Should one just go for it? Go for all the happiness and pleasure in the world? Should one not do it? Because we know of things of how it leads us to destruction. So basically, there have been two theories that have been proposed by various thinkers. The first is the way of the Stoic, or Shankara's Mayavada, the Advaitic approach, or Stoic like Zeno, who say that this part of the being is too difficult to handle. So therefore, let us ignore it, or let us not give it that expression. It should be suppressed, not allowed to come up in life. That was the Stoic philosophy of enduring everything. It was the Advaitic philosophy, or the Stoic philosophy, was to negate this emotional being, to not allow it to participate because it can create havoc, to keep it controlled. The other way was that if happiness is the goal of life, why not just go for it? And that was the way of the Epicure, the Greek philosopher during 340 BC. Also the Charvakas, the materialist in Hinduism, who lived around 600 BC. They advocated the same, that indulge the emotional being. So we had these two different opposite ways of dealing with the vital. One is to completely negate it. The other is to completely indulge it. And then came a third way where it was considered that either of these ways is too much to handle for human nature because it was not leading to the right results. So therefore came the proponents of the golden mean. For instance, Socrates, to Plato, to Aristotle, they all spoke about the golden mean. Socrates says that a man must know how to choose the mean and avoid the extremes on either side. The middle part of Buddha talks about the same thing, abstaining from addictive self-pleasure on one side and self-mortification on the other. Confucius, the doctrine of the mean, speaks the same. Tiruvalluvar, from Tamil Nadu, all speak about this golden mean. So what does this golden mean say? That do not negate it too much, neither indulge it too much. So it is like less of both and therefore coming at a mean. Now, what does Sri Aurobindo propose? We have a fourth way now from Sri Aurobindo. And can you guess what he proposes? He says, have more of both. As we know, Sri Aurobindo is not a proponent of life-negating spirituality. He is about life-affirming spirituality. It is a synthesis of all the paths till today, and not just a normal synthesis of addition, but like of synergy, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Sri Aurobindo synthesis is that synergistic way of looking at things. So how does Sri Aurobindo say, do not do more of both? So this is what we will be looking into today. So he says that the vital being need not be completely negated or discarded, whereas the problems of the vital have to be purified and educated and widened. So we do not negate the vital being, but we negate all the negatives associated with the vital being. So that is how he is more than just negating. And on the other side, he says, indulge the vital being more, but again with a caveat, but not for what people commonly call happiness or pleasure, or the superficial running after things, but indulge it to express the divine delight. Satchit Ananda. The Ananda is the purpose for which the world was created, yes, but it has been misunderstood as the pursuit of pleasure. There is a difference between pure joy and pleasure, which is the pursuit of things for the sake of the things. So this is how Sri Aurobindo gives us this beautiful synthesis that vital is an indispensable instrument, because Sri Aurobindo talks about life affirming spirituality. It is not attaining moksha and going into the Himalayan caves. It is to bring down the kingdom of God on earth. And as I said before, anything which has to come down on earth needs the emotions, the vital, for it to realize its concreteness. So this is the basis from where the education of the vital, this is the background to why the vital has to be educated. It has to be allowed to become a happy instrument in the hands of the higher forces, of higher intelligence. And imagine the Ratha, let us say in today's world, if there was Mahabharata and if Krishna was driving your Bugatti Veyron and you were seated you were there, the Ratha of Arjuna, how secure we would be in that car, right? So installing Krishna or the Divine Mother as the driver of our being, of our emotional being, so that we can express the highest, like what Shakespeare and Kalidasa did, and make our lives meaningfully, useful, is what Sri Aurobindo talks about. And Dr. Kiran spoke about the purification of the senses. So I would just touch upon it in a very practical way. Why are senses important to be purified? Because every knowledge that we get from this world, is through the senses. There were times in the past when people had intuitive understanding, and there were more than 5 senses. There were up to 12 senses in ancient traditions. But as of today, we have these 5 senses of sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. And every knowledge that we get from the world is through these senses. So these senses should be completely filterless. They have to be completely transparent. If I am an artist and I'm getting inspiration from nature, I cannot allow my personal likes and dislikes to come into my perception of reality that I am perceiving. If I'm a scientist, the first process starts from the process of observation. And in that observation, I cannot allow something which is not reality to come into my experiment, because it would lead to a wrong hypothesis. So the development of the senses is important because they are the first gates of our knowledge from this world. And to purify the senses, we have to develop our aesthetic being, for instance. Our aesthetic being is very important to be developed, because the entire problem of vulgarity, of crudeness, of violence can be handled if children from childhood are taught. You know about the Japanese culture. Aesthetics is a part of the natural surroundings. And we know that even when there are these calamities, people stand in queues, and there is a certain refinement of nature that comes through it. And this aesthetic being is purified or developed through performing arts, fine arts, dramatic arts, music, dance, and so on. The second way is that to develop love for noble and lofty things from childhood. And how is this done? Stories of great heroes. Children from the ages of 0 to 7 and up to 14 are full of idealism. They want to become like legends. And through the stories of the great people like Shivaji and literature, poetry, one can really inspire the love for these noble and lofty things. And finally, the development of power and of precision, which can be developed through sports. Building of character has been much discussed here. So I will not go into it too much, except to just add that in practical terms, we can always identify the positive emotions within us and negative. All of us have that inner compass, to identify. The positive emotions, we know intuitively are love, kindness, compassion, courage, generosity, selflessness. The negative emotions are anger, greed, pride, vanity, or jealousy. So when we are experiencing this, what is the process that we can work with our emotions? So the first thing is that we begin to observe them. That is important. We should know that right now I'm experiencing this emotion. The second step is to name it. Most of the times it is such a knot, that we don't even know what we are experiencing. So if I name it, that sometimes when we are anxious, we start shouting as if we are angry, because we can't name our emotions. So if we tell that this is anxiety and now I have to deal with it. So naming is the second step. And the third step is using a higher faculty than that anger, which is also in us, to control it. For instance, the mind or the buddhi, the wisdom that we have already, which knows that it is not good to be angry. We know that when we are angry, the negative emotions, before going outside, they pass through our body and they leave a trail of, a lot of damage chemically in our body. So once we know that, we kind of use that. It is like in a classroom, there are children, there is no class teacher. So let's say our emotions are like the children in the class. So the mind can be temporarily be the class leader, who's keeping the kids in order before the class teacher comes, who is this higher faculty or the soul. So just behind the human heart, there is there's the soul, the psychic heart, which knows. It knows because it is what is right. And similarly, we have just above our mind, we have a faculty that tells us what is right and what is wrong. So through reflection at night, if we have a personal journal, every night before going to bed, we should go over the day and try to write down when did we lose our temper, for instance, or when did we feel that jealousy because our friends got through some college which we didn't, or and then we write down and then we bring in these higher faculties and then resolve not to do it again tomorrow. So this is how character can be built step by step. And there are several things which we can take up during the question and answer sessions. But the important thing is, why should we at all do this? Why should we have a sports car? Towards what? What is our aim? Where are we headed? So to be able to develop this education, emotional education to be able to do that, it is important that right from childhood, we develop a worldview. As parents, as teachers, we should help children develop a worldview. Then we will never have answers like we want to be happy. When my son was 3 or 4 years old, like a story, I told him this entire process of evolution, like what is the purpose of this world, that how the divine came into matter, and slowly matter is becoming life, and life is becoming mind, and then we think mind is the highest, but it is not. There is a higher super mind that we have to be, and he was 4 years old. And that was such a worldview. It became that once in his class, the teacher was singing this song that I wish I was in Monkey Land, the land where I was born. And he was 4 years old, and he raised his hand. And the teacher asked him, yes, Aryan, what happened? He said, ma'am, we should never go backward. We should go forward. So we should sing, I wish I was in Superman land. So an important thing is that the worldview can be built even when one is 3 years old. And more so because that is the time when idealism rules. Children intuitively understand these archetypes of beauty, of justice. And at that time, if this worldview is formed that we are here, we are born with a purpose, and that purpose has to align with the purpose of creation, and all our energies have to go into that. And therefore, the emotional education becomes important, because otherwise our lives go haywire. So that helps, a worldview helps in the emotional education. And it is never a good idea to child-proof any idea. When a child asks us something, the highest that we know, we should always answer. Be it the purpose of the world or anything, because they are smarter than us. They understand actually. And I more or less feel that I should pause here and take up questions now, and cover the other things in the questions. So just to come the discussion, we have a purpose in this world. The purpose is to realize a higher potentiality that we are born with. All of us are born with a higher potentiality. The vital education can either be a friend or an enemy. The emotional part in us can either lead us to that or take us away from that. It can either be a good slave or a bad master. So the whole purpose of vital education is to make it a good slave to that higher parts in us, so that there was no big difference between Ram and Ravan in terms of the knowing. Ram was also, he knew Brahma, he knew the Vedas. But what distinguished him from Ram is that Ravan's vital was under the control of the Asuric forces, and Ram's was on the forces of the divine. So that makes all the difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Gitanjali, for this very inspiring talk. It was beautiful. Thank you, Kiranji, again, for your vast conceptual platform of seeing the place of vital education. And now I'm opening to the questions, and we received some already. You can check with whatever is available, and it was there was a request of Bahman from CIIS of discussing these topics, and it would be wonderful if you could have this possibility to discuss the topics of the emotions.
There is a question here. I would not like to name, but there is a question about, and there is somebody who's written that somebody entertains thoughts of suicide. So how can we do this? Use the vital for that. So I would just like to share with you 2 stories, which one is this understanding that no matter what it is that we are running away from by suicide, there is no running away actually, because in our next life, we are born with 10 times more difficult situations of the same problem. So the fact of evolution is that whatever difficulties are presented before us, to deal with them, because there's no running away. Even if we commit suicide, it comes back again next birth and in more severity. So this understanding should stop us from entertaining those thoughts. And the second thing is taking life as an adventure. We all go for holidays and vacations, for an adventure. And what is this adventure? It is like doing something thrilling, doing something we've never done before. So if we take life as an adventure and if we begin to live consciously, we will see that every moment is like an adventure. So in adventure, basically what we do is we are used to a comfort zone of living in a city life and, having everything at our disposal. So we like to go and trek in the mountains. And through that adventure, we are just widening our comfort zones. So the same attitude, if we take towards life, that life is not some random thing which has happened. There is an intelligence, a loving intelligence actually, which is enveloping everything. And even the most toughest of situations that are being given to us is like a very loving teacher who gives us difficult questions so that we advance fast in life. So if we take life as an adventure and then all the difficulties that we get, we use it to widen our comfort zones and therefore, increase the field of action that we have. And there are many examples. J.K. Rowling, yesterday was her birthday, and it was her 55th birthday. She would not have lived to see this birthday because 29 years ago, in 97, I think, she was alone. She had just come out of an abusive marriage. She had a child. She did not have a job. Her mother had just died. I mean, there cannot be a worse situation than that. And she was contemplating suicide. But then on a walk with her child in a pram, when she went into a cafe, it struck her that there was this book that she had started writing a few years ago. And why not start writing that? And then she wrote the first chapter. And all of us who have been writers, we know that how it fills us with that happiness, that fulfillment, when we do something progressive like that. And then the second chapter, and then within 2 years, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was published. And she has today sold 500 million copies of her series. And it is like it's the dream of any author. She is in the history of publishing. She is the best author, the most well-read. And that's just one part of the story. The other thing is she kick-started this reading habit in young adults, which was dwindling. So, we all go through these times when there is something which is absolutely crushing us. But that love for life that is there is an indication that we are here for a possibility, And the more difficult the situation, the higher is our possibility to achieve its opposite. So if we remember that and just go through it, we'll feel like winners.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, Gitanjali. And of course, there are more questions here about emotions and how to control emotions, but I would like to invite something. Are you projecting?
Yeah. I think here somebody has asked the question related to emotions and feelings difference. I want to show that how Bharat Muni introduced, how he talks about emotions and how not suppressing, rather, communicating or, expressing through this vow. And art and other forms like drama, music, dance. If you have seen Indian classical dance, they talk about all bhava like rati, hasya, shoka, krodh, utsaha. These are all kind of, that communicates emotion actually. But then it comes from the feelings. There is one more question there, which somebody is asking, like, what is the difference between emotion and feeling? So it comes, when there is a sanchari bhav is there, then that expressed through that sthai bhav, which is in human, and it communicates to like hasya rati. For example, there is a hasya bhav, that is emotion, hasya. Vibhav is peculiar of dress or speech. Anubhav is if somebody is mimicking, and then sanchari bhav is a smile. So if we learn these are the feelings and these are the emotion, and we use art form, any art form, to communicate, to express, it does not get suppressed. It does not remain in us. So, for example, somebody is upset and use brushes and paint colors. It gives the expression of those emotions, whether it is pain or whether it is sublimity is also there. So it is very important to understand what Gitanjali ji said, that you need to identify, you need to name it. And for name also, in this, which Mr. Brackett, he developed one tool also. I like to share this tool here. Like he developed ruler acronym, which I just discussed in that presentation. So if you, and it is software also, it is an app. If you touch any of this quadrant, it will communicate exactly. For example, right now I'm sad. I've said, feeling like I'm depressed. Then if you touch on the screen of that app, you will get exactly what kind of feeling you are having and why you are sad. And then you you have to identify the reason behind it that you are feeling. And then after identifying reason, you can always use the tool to express in a different manner instead of going into your own cocoon. So there are multiple things happening, and we have that literature. In Indian knowledge system, we have that lots of things where, we understand what is bhav, anubhav, and vibhav, that is emotions, in detail. And that is why Aurobindo continuously saying that, we have to develop aesthetic sense. To use this emotion. So Western countries have given this kind of tool, Goldman and Mr. Brackett from Yale University, and Indian knowledge system, long back discussed about emotions in this way, where we can see through classical dance. That is why I showed this presentation here.
Thank you, Kiranji. Of course, there is a kind of. I will just give you Gitanjali in a minute. There is an issue with emotions and feelings, because truly speaking, we are trying to train people to have different emotions. Yes, we are trying to give to them tools how to, for example, meditate. Imagine that you are in the light or on the waves of the ocean. So you start using imagination. You start using some kind of tools to make yourself comfortable and happy again and peaceful again. And so we are dealing with these emotions already. But truly speaking, this is the artificial device. It will never bring final kind of change in our purified vitality. And so we will never purify our vital by this. We may gain certain kind of momentous release of our tension. But truly speaking, solution lies elsewhere. We have to go deeper. We have to find the true meaning of our life. We have to find that connection, as Upanishads speak about prayas and shreyas. So if you go for prayas, if the aim of your life is prayas, then you will be trapped one way or another. You will be dealing with these emotions. You will go to psychotherapists every day, and you will all the time try to figure out what to do with them. But if you choose the path of Shreyas, of the goodness, the ultimate good, the dharmic path, where you support the dharma of everyone being's happiness, then you start looking at it from different perspective, and that deeper sense of being, which is there behind, that unconditional sense of bliss, which is always there, may go through and finally become tangible and perceptible to us. So this is something which is already yogic view on life. Yes, we have to reach deeper to ourselves and find that source of bliss, which may fill all life, and find all those powers of life useful, and they will join this bliss and will become part of this movement. Gitanjali, you wanted to say something. Bahman is waiting, I guess. Bahman, would you like to discuss, because you're still waiting? You were asking first for the discussion, and
well, thank you. I think that some of the conversation is already addressing what I asked. In my own mind, I think of feelings as something that we experience, like lived experience, and there are a number of different types of feelings. The quality, and when we talk about emotions, to me that seems like more of a concept. It's more about dynamism and energy, and how we can reflect on it and understand it. So to me, actually, the feeling and working with feelings and understanding the feelings is more of a foundational principle, and I was hoping that that would be just brought up as a topic, because I think as long as we talk about emotions, we're talking about more of a whole person set of variables that get entangled. It's really, an emotion is not just an experience in the moment, even though we use this word all the time, but it's more like feeling is what we feel, like that chart that was shown, like I'm feeling sad and so on. So anyway, I just leave it open in terms of actually working with feelings and then understanding emotions. I see them in this light, but I think we already started a conversation on that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bahman. It's a very important distinction between senses, sensory kind of activities of the vital feelings and emotions. In the system, in the vision of these three, we could see that the emotions are more, painted with the mind, with the concept, idealism, beauty, aesthetics. These are the emotions which can be formulated in the mind as concepts, whereas feelings are more like impulses or the states of being, something which is unknown to us. We feel it rather than we understand it. So then we start trying to understand it, and they become emotions, as it were. We already bring the mind into that activity. So there are three levels of the vital. The highest is emotions. These are higher emotions, and even which may lead us to the higher aspirations in life. There is the middle part, which is proper feelings, proper impulses of the vital, the very force of being afraid, or being jealous, or being, having desires. We didn't speak about desire in this session, which is a very important topic altogether. And then we have the sensations in the body, which are more connected to the physical body, like a heat, like itching, like pain in the body. These are also vital connections to the physical body. And that is the triple vital, as it were, in the Veda, known as Trini Rajansi, three vital levels. Yeah. And they correspond to what we know in the tantric tradition as Anahata chakra, Manipura chakra, and Svadhisthana chakra. So these are three chakras on the torso. This is our vital realm. Yeah? Very, very complex, and requires a lot of study and understanding of these components. Thank you for your...
Yeah, sorry. There is a question here that how we teach young children whose mind is not developed.
Yes, please.
This question is very dear to my heart, because I have worked with my child when he was 4. Today he's 18. And I had tried to very consciously put into practice all that I studied in Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. So the first thing is that children only learn at that age what they see. So it is only by imitation. I mean, it is not by instruction at all. Like if you don't have to even say anything. If you are the one getting up at 5, going for a run, they will start doing that, And if you are engaged whole day in something meaningful, you are not watching television, they just do that. They just see you being meaningfully engaged. So leading by example, not just at 4 or 5, even later. Because even later when they are 12 or 14 and they develop a mind, it may appear that for some time they are self-willed or they are doing whatever, but this childhood sanskaras, as they are called, what has been experienced by them always stays with them. So that is the first thing to do, to lead by example. The second is to expose them to all the beautiful things in the world, because they are full of idealism at that time. All the beautiful stories, all the heroism, courage, valor, surround their life with beautiful things. They are full of energy. So what I did was, my son was one bundle of energy. So at the age of 5, I got a karate teacher at home. And, that used to really help him work out and channelize. Most of the parents would give a tablet and make them sit in front of a television because that controls them. But then that energy is not being used. So, if you engage them in sports or in arts, or so their energy is channelized into something positive. And I did that karate with him. And both of us together became black belts. And it was so happy moment for him, because he used to feel very proud that other people's mothers just come and sit and the kids only do, but my mama can also do it. And so it was very inspiring for him that mama can also do, and he would feel very proud. And so both of us became black belts, and also we won the world championship together in this fun and laughter, So being an example to your child, not just when they are 4, but all through, is the key.
Beautiful. Thank you for this example. Yes, it's wonderful to have such mother who is ready to fight with you for the black belt and championship when you're a kid. It's wonderful. Yes. Yes, and you did many more things with Aryan, and Hindustani music and piano music and swimming and gymnastics and so on and so forth, and dance and singing. Everything was given to him to fulfill his need for this vital depth of vital and purity and clarity of vitality in him. That's why he grew up such a brilliant child. He is already not a child, he is an adult, young adult. But
it is very mutually, enriching, because you get a chance. A lot of women say that, now that we are married, all our hobbies. I say, no, this is your second chance with your children. Do it again with them. And it inspires them, and you get to, do it which you had missed out.
Yes, wonderful. And thank you, Gitanjali, for this, for sharing your personal story.
Once this vital has been purified, it becomes a very enjoyable journey, actually, because you have this source of power with you at your beck and call. It can help you with all the great visions that you envisage. It helps you to realize it on earth, and it really becomes a beautiful ride after that.
There is one more question. Should we keep them away, children away, from what we understand to be negative influences? Until what age? At what age are they ready for the entire range of emotions, rasas? This is a very provocative question, I think, and very interesting. How would you answer? What do you have some thoughts?
So I can tell you what Plato said and what Sri Aurobindo said and what I did. So Plato says that from 0 to 7, when the child is developing his physicality, and he should be exposed to nature, beauty, and all of that. And also from 7 to 14. But from 14 to 18, when the mind has developed and all these good influences have gone in, then they become the basis on which the decisions can be taken. And strangely, I find the same thing in Sri Aurobindo, who says that till 14, it is the duty of every parent to tell the child what should be done, what should not be done, and as much as possible, keep them in this idealism, in this world of beauty and harmony. Because after 14, they automatically get exposed to it in the world. And they have by then, if their sensibilities have not been spoiled with all this negativity, then they develop a right compass, as I said, developing this inside the. See, we can never keep advising them. This is a mistake Indian parents make even after they are married and they are 50. They are always telling them, the children, what to do. But Sri Aurobindo says that from the age of 14, just let them be. Only if they come to you for advice them. Otherwise, even let them even fail. Let them learn through failures. That is important learning. But your job is, before the child is born, when he is in the mother's womb, from there on, his education starts, or even before he's in the mother's womb, that's when your work starts, to aspire for the right kind of child, and then during the time he's in the womb, to be to be engaged in everything which is beautiful and positive. We know so many stories of Abhimanyu and others who were influenced when they're in their wombs. And then by the time they are 5, 10 and 14, by the time they're 14, I think we leave them to experience the world. Whereas it is the opposite, children are just conceived without even any conscious planning. And then childhood, they're just made to sit in front of the television, nothing is done. And by the time they're 14, and they should be allowed to be free, all kinds of parental controls that take this career or do that come in. So we've got it all wrong. And that is why there is a problem.
Wonderful. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Gitanjali. Right. Any more questions?
I think we have
exhausted the topic
and generously overshot the time.
Right.
But I think we were happy to be part of this large family and discuss this. All these issues are very universal, and we all have to learn from each other.
Yes. Beautiful. So maybe at this moment I will thank everyone, Kiranji and Gitanjali for this beautiful presentation, and Radhe for introduction of introducing us to new perspectives, which we started as the webinars, regular webinars to discuss these profound topics. And next time we will have on the 7th of August, continuation of this topic on vital education, presentation by Dr. Alok Pandey. So please join us and join with your questions and participation. It would be wonderful that we continue this line of thought, and maybe it will become helpful for educationists to implement and to start looking into their curriculum and develop some kind of emotional intelligence subjects or curriculum, which will be helping students to develop this emotional intelligence. Thank you all, and all the best. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Organizers, Radhe, Dr. Kiran, and most of all, Vladimir.
Thank you.